Hello everyone, thanks for coming to hear my little talk. We got involved in Hugelkultur in the spirit of experimentation. So I'm going to tell you what the ideal is, but the reality will follow soon after. So we've been working in the wood for about 15 years, and when we got there, we cleared it, and you'll see what it was like when we started. And since that time, we've had a vegetable garden that's developed through the no-dig system. There's 3 beds that we do rotate on, actually, and they're all small enough so you don't have to tread on them at all. There's a fruit cage, and there's a little orchard of local variety apples and a quince. The key thing to notice in this slide is the 6-foot deer fencing, because everything we grow, other than on the hugel mound, needs to be protected. So that is a key thing. Then out there, subject to the wild, are some hugel beds. And obviously we try and grow things in there that won't be predated by animals, if at all possible. And I'll tell you about how we constructed those. So what is Hugelkultur? It means mound, and there are all kinds of claims for it out there on the internet, that it's been used for hundreds of years by, peasants in Europe. I don't know about that at all. The first mention of it is by an Austrian gardener called Sepp Holzer, who's very, very interesting. And he actually coined the term, and he's a permaculture practitioner, but he also farms on slopes that have a sort of 500 metre range from kind of snow down to valleys. So he's got to think very much about retaining soil and not sliding down the hills. So up there it says it's a system of no-dig raised beds, just like what we just heard about, which are built from waste rotting wood. And that's the key thing for us. You can guess we had a lot of that, which is why we did what we did. Here's a great little diagram of what it's supposed to be like, and I'll talk you through the process. Many people start with a nice piece of lawn or turf, and they turn that over and retain it to go on top of the mound. And then again, they may dig a trench, anything from a foot to, in some cases, a metre deep, and they put drainage in there, and then they put lengths of quite big timber, often hardwood, sometimes softwood, but the key thing, I think, is that it should be starting to decompose. They then cover that with whatever they have at hand, really, and that's my message to you all. Use whatever you have at hand. Having removed perennial weeds, they add brush and small branches to make a thinner layer on the top, and then compost or manure or grass clippings or straw. That's something we have a lot of, is straw, so straw goes into ours. And leaf mould, we have a lot of that too. And then at the end, they put the turf back on, which holds it all together. So the idea is that they've made something that sometimes can be this high, if you've got a digger, and you can plant into all the way up. And a key thing that we start to see in this diagram there is that as the wood rots, the plants that are being put into it are holding the mound together with their roots. So there has to be a system whereby you have perennials that are going to work their way down into the soil and hold the thing together. And then you can plant annuals on it, such as greens or lettuces, but you probably wouldn't want to put potatoes in, although you do see on the net people with massive beds, as long as the room, or meters long, where they're planting a whole range of different vegetables and fruits in there. So there we are, that's the theory. On to the practice. I should have said this. Benefits of hugelkultur they maintain are that it retains water, and I'm sure it does, because obviously you've got the decomposing material, you don't have to water. You're building in to the process long-term fertility, and if you've got limited space, then you've got a bigger growing area. It's accessible without walking on the soil, and in the long term, after all that effort to build it, you've got easier cultivation. Now that's the view of where our garden and hugel beds are now when we arrived in the wood. So that is an overgrown Christmas tree plantation. So those are Norway spruce trees. So the first thing we had to do was clear some land for many reasons actually, not just for gardening. Ooh. So there we are, we've got the diggers in. I'm just going to go back because there should be another slide there. Doesn't seem to have come up. No, just a blank. Okay. So we've got the diggers in and we're clearing the spruce, pushing all the stumps to one side. Then we're actually flattening the whole area to make the hard standing for a car park and a lorry park. And over there is where the garden is that you saw at the beginning, and along here and over there are where the hugel beds are now. So that was the first stage of the process. The timber was used as teepee poles, some of it was sold for wood chip, and some of it was actually good enough to be planked up. So that's sort of what we're doing in the wood rather than hugel bed making, to be honest. Behind there, that's quite important, is a nursery, a big plant nursery, and we can get lots of compost from them. So the reason we started thinking about hugelkultur was that we clearly had the right materials on hand. We needed to clear the land, and we'd established our garden plot, and we thought, well, it's a good way to supplement what we have. And the other thing was that one of our daughters said, oh, let's do a forest garden. So she'd done her permaculture, now we're on to the forest garden, but that's a talk for another time. So these are the stages that we use to make a hugel bed. I have to admit they're not all pictures of the same bed, but this is a process. So we start by clearing the ground of perennial weeds as far as we can. We could put cardboard down, we could put straw down, and you can see all around there's fallen timber. You see, we don't have to move far to get it, and that's my main message. Don't do this if you've got to import timber. Only do it if you've got the stuff on hand. So there's clearing the weeds. And this is the first bed we did set up to go. So you can see we've got partly decomposed spruce here. We've made a sort of retaining wall all the way around. This is only about 2 foot high, actually. And then there's all kinds of more hardwoods, brash, like hazel, elder, whatever was lying around went on top. And here are bags of manure, bags of leaf mould, and bags of compost that we can borrow from the field just beyond the bed from our generous neighbour. So we've got everything on hand, apart from the manure which we get from a friend. So there they are, building it up, emptying all the bags on. The boss telling us what to do there. So you can see it's not a very tall mound, but it is mounded over. And some people say, don't plant into it immediately, let it settle. And of course, you get it ready just before planting time, so you plant straight into it. So this is the first, you can see we've put actually black plastic over. So that's the first crop that we always do, is pumpkins on there, because deer don't want to eat them for one reason, because of the hairy leaves, and it also covers the mound and brings it all together very quickly. So, and that's the first harvest, which is great. That's our first pumpkin harvest. The second year on that bed that you saw being built, we put strawberries and courgettes, and the courgettes were fine because they didn't get predated, but the strawberries were a bit overwhelmed. So the third year, and this photo was taken last autumn, we decided to put autumn bliss raspberries on there with a cherry tree in the centre. And that seems to have worked quite well. The deer might just nibble the tops, but they can't get right in to nibble all of it. And obviously we're competing with the birds, but we don't mind that. Rabbits, yes. Although they don't seem to want to climb up, actually. The rabbits aren't so bad. There's lots of mice, of course, that get in, and that's something we could talk about in a minute, really. And this is the view from that bed about a fortnight ago, me looking back at, so we've cut down all the autumn bliss, as you do, and looking through at the beds that we started making. So those are all put together in the same way, and they've gone in stages, really. So that was the next one, and then the next one, and then the next one. So here's a view across, again quite recently. This one we had squash in. Following year we did courgettes and decided to put in some summer fruiting raspberries, which haven't really done that well, partly because of the deer, but partly because of the variety, I think. But we'll persist with that. We've got the wires there. The middle one, we put some potatoes in, and they were okay, but anything that gets too near the wood tends to get slugged. So you've got to be aware that rotting wood is a great home for slugs. And the third one, that's been a great success, actually. We just put artichokes in this year. And have you ever tried eating artichokes raw? They're really bitter. I mean, no deer will eat those. And they've been a great success, so we'll do that again, I think. So some of the things that occurred to us while we've made these is the initial effort worth it for the easier cultivation in future years? Certainly is for us, because we've got all the materials right there, so why wouldn't you do it? We're still working out what the best crops for hugelkultur are, and all over the internet there are claims for what's good, what works, what doesn't, and you can look that up. We've looked at it as experimentation, what will keep the deer off. Is it really conserving water? I must admit I have watered courgettes in those beds, but I haven't watered anything else over the years. And there's this claim that a hugel bed can last 5 years to 20 years. Well, we don't really want ours to last 20 years because we've got plans, actually, we're doing them to clear the land. So it's quite happy for them to last 5 years, and then we can move on because we've got loads of materials. But some of the people making vast ones with a huge commitment of labour, I guess they do want them to last for 20 years. So that's us. If you want to find out more, go to the website. Thank you.